I'd like to welcome to everyone to part one of our series on sales, Sales Management Make the Most of Global Best Practices, hosted by SME Finance Forum in partnership with CapPlus Exchange and presented by Sandy Vaci. We are expecting a great turnout today, and I'd like to thank all of you for participating in this webinar. I'll go ahead and start with a brief overview on how this webinar will be run, and then I'll introduce our facilitator. I'm Jessica Alfaro, and I manage our peer exchange and partnerships at CapPlus Exchange. I'm very pleased to have met or communicated with many of you and to meet the rest of you today.
The agenda. We'll talk with the so-called technical definition of sales. What does it mean if we have sales capability within an organization? How we can test for that, a very simple diagnostics. Then review of best practices, how different companies, how the best companies do all these things. Part of that is putting training into context, because today what we are doing is kind of training, but training in and of itself is not very useful unless there are enablers for everybody to take advantage of the training. We'll talk about building a well-functioning sales machine, activity planning, and so on. And some more, because guess what? I'm a lazy guy and I don't want to talk all the time, and I want to ask you guys questions too, so that you hopefully stay with me and don't fall asleep and have to think as we go through all of this. Now, we don't have time and the possibility for everybody to introduce themselves, but I will introduce myself just very briefly. Some of you may have met me before. That is my picture on the left. And my name is Sandy Vaci, as Jessica said, and I spent over 35 years building and managing businesses, a lot of different banks in different countries, over 50 countries now. I do have one constant in my life, that is my wife, whom I have known for 40 years and who followed me through 23 moves as I was working for companies like Procter & Gamble, Royal Bank of Canada, Citibank International, Royal Bank of Scotland, Credit Bank of Moscow, Raiffeisen, and so on and so forth. And right now I'm going around the world and trying to help companies to do business better. So that is my life in a nutshell. So let's get to the webinar itself. And my first question is, just so that I understand, among the participants, it would be interesting for me to know how many of you are actually doing sales, professional sales, as part of your day job. So could you please pick yes or no, and then Jessica will tell me what is the split among the audience. So do you do selling as in a professional capacity as your day job, or do you not?
Great, and so the poll is open, so we'd like to encourage you to go ahead and vote. This is a pretty easy one, so either yes or no, and we'll keep it open for about 10 more seconds. So if you could just let us know if you are doing selling as part of your professional job. And we'll go ahead and close the poll now, and Sandy, you won't believe it, but it is split evenly, 50-50. So 50% yes and 50% no.
Okay, well, in that case, I do have news for the 50% who said no. Believe it or not, you are doing selling as part of your job, day job, and you're doing it professionally, because you know what? We all do selling. And my favorite example for this is Svea. And you see the picture of Svea when she was younger, about 2.5 years old. Svea today is about 18, and I hope she doesn't mind that I'm using an old picture of hers. Svea was the daughter of our dear friends from Switzerland, and I remember we went to visit them, and we brought a box of chocolates for Svea. Now, Svea knew that she really wanted to have these chocolates, but she also knew she was not allowed to have any of them before dinner. And she could hardly wait for dinner, and she somehow decided that, yes, she wants to have these chocolates before dinner. So this is what Svea did. She opened the box of chocolates, she went to Mommy and said, "Mommy, here, take one." Well, of course, Mommy would not refuse, so Mommy took a piece of chocolate. Then Svea went to Daddy and said, "Here, Daddy, please take one." So Daddy, of course, could not refuse and took a piece of chocolate. Then Svea went to my wife and said, Judith, please take one. And Judith, well, Svea is so kind and she's offering the chocolate. We can't say no. So she took one, and Svea came to me and said, Sandy, please take one. So I took one. Then Svea looked up with a huge big smile and said, and now I take some. And she stuffed her face full of chocolates. And of course, at this point, we could not, put up any opposition to this. We could not say, come on, you're not supposed to, after we all took chocolates. Now, Svea was 2.5 years old, and she demonstrated perfectly what is called an assumptive sales closing technique. So, believe it or not, we are all doing sales from a very, very early time, but there is a difference between doing sales and actually having sales capability in a professional sense. And I wanted to start with the question, and I wanted to start with the story of Svea so that we don't confuse the two. Because it's one thing to do sales professionally. We all do that. 100% of you are doing it. You're selling your ideas to your boss, to your colleagues, to your people, etc., whether or not your title says sales. But then it's another thing to actually have sales capability in the organization. Generally speaking, we say we have sales capability in our company if we have sales organization. So we actually have, a sales department and so on. We have sales management practices. I'm not talking about management as people, I'm talking about practices, sales processes, sales skills. We also have channels through which we deliver and supporting functions. Now you can see the channels and support functions. I put an X beside because we have talked about these before, so we are not going to revisit those. Let's talk a little bit. What is a sales organization? Sales organization is when we got, as I said, salespeople, we have a boss, the jobs are filled, there is a succession planning in place, roles, responsibilities are clarified. Now, a lot of people say that you have to hire people to fill the right positions. We need to define the organization and then build the human resources around it. I'm a little bit more forgiving. When a company starts out, it is quite okay to start building the organization around available talent. But we can only do that for about 2 years, and after that we actually need to start defining the organization and hire the right people for the right slots. So I always say we have about a 2-year grace period when we are starting up something to actually define everything based on available people, available talent, but after that we better start defining the organization and hire the right people to fill the slots. So that's about organization, and I don't want to go through all these points because you will have access to this, so you can peruse them, use them later on as you wish. So let's carry on. Sales management practices, everything from coordination to planning, objective setting, tracking, rewarding, and so on. There's a whole lot that goes into sales management, and people always ask me, so what is the key job? What is the most important thing? And I say, unfortunately, whatever you look at, that is the most important, because the speed of the caravan is always determined by the slowest camel. So whichever piece is missing, or you're not very good at, guess what? That is going to be the most important thing. So you can't get around it. Anyway, sales management, then there are sales processes. Now the thing to know about sales processes is any processes is a process only exists if it's written down, people know it, and people follow it. So if I went to any of you and asked you, well, do you have a process for acquisition or retention? And you would tell me yes. I would immediately ask you, so give me the piece of paper on which it is written down. If you cannot give me a piece of paper, then I am very sorry, you do not have that process. Because the process only exists if it's written down, your people actually know it, and they actually follow it. And the processes are broken down into different kind of activities. A process is really just a list of activity steps, okay, that follow each other. And then we talk about sales skills as the fourth key component of having sales capabilities. And that goes from understanding the product and the regulatory environment all the way to being able to present it, to build the offer, to handle objections and closing the sales. And this is very, very important because, I don't think I ever met somebody who got up in the morning and said, oh, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do a really bad job. When people do a bad job at work, it is not because they actually want to do a bad job. It is because we don't allow them to do a good job. And a big part of that is giving them the skills that they can use to do a good job. Now, you have seen that there are many, many points under each of these headings, and it can get very complicated very fast. That's why we need to simplify it. And I remember back at Citibank, when I was working there, we were struggling with this, and we came up with a very simple way of simplifying all of this, distill down these 4 key areas into 4 basic questions each, and then we can use it as a mini diagnostic test. And some of you, if you are here from CRDB, Bajtusun, Bragbank, Volksbank, Unicredit, you will know that when we talked, I already brought this diagnostic kit in. So I wanted to take a look at the this mini diagnostic kit that we can use to decide whether or not we have sales capability within an organization. And what we do is simply, we have organization, management, processes, and skills, and under each, there are 4 questions listed. Then what we do is we look at reality. To what extent do we have this in our organization? Like, do our frontline salespeople really spend at least half of their time selling? What is the reality? And we give it a reality rating between 0 and 100%. Like, 0 is no, nobody does that. 25% is, well, yeah. 50% is, yeah, about half the time that is true. 75% is, yeah, mostly. And 100% is, yes, everybody at frontline spends at least 50% of their time selling. Good. Then we also judge the importance. How important do we think that we should have this? And we give it the same percentage rating, 0, 25, 50, 75, 100, to keep it simple. Then we take the difference of these two. We take the importance and we take the reality rating out of that. So importance minus reality will give us another number, which is help needed. And if it's less than 0, we give it 0. And then we add up the help needed numbers and put it under the total at the bottom, and that will give us a good feeling whether or not we need to focus on the organizational aspect of our sales capabilities, on the management aspect, on the processes, or on the skills. And my challenge to you, and we don't have time to do it right now, but my challenge to you would be to please do this. Have this very simple diagnostic test. Fill it out yourself so you know what you think, and then go around and ask people in the organization anonymously from different areas to fill it out, and that way very quickly you will see what the organization thinks of itself, what your bank thinks of itself, where you need help, and that will give you some very useful guidance on where to focus. Okay? So Jessica, I hope this can be made available, right?
Absolutely. We'll be sharing this with all of the participants.
Great stuff. Okay, so then we don't need to talk anymore about that, and we carry on because now that we measure where we need to focus, then we have another big question. Then, okay, so do we actually have the capacity? Do people have the time? Do people work hard enough? Many companies say, well, you know, just get the right people and make them work hard. So, mini quiz: how many hours do you think salespeople on average work per day? 5 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12. So, poll is open. Give it, like, you know, shouldn't take more than 5-10 seconds for you to think about how many hours on average salespeople work per day.
Great. And so we're starting to get some responses in, and we'll keep it open for about 10 more seconds here. So if you want to respond, how many hours per day do salespeople work on average? And Sandy will be able to share a little bit more about this. And we're going to go ahead and close the poll right about now. And okay. Sandy, 50% of the participants are saying that they work 5 to 6 hours. 31% are saying 7 to 8 hours, 13% are saying 9 to 10 hours, and 6% are saying 11 to 12.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let me show you the global results then, because as anything, this thing got researched. And here is what happens around the world. The only people who work harder than salespeople are independent entrepreneurs, like small business people. On average, they work more than 10 hours per day. Salespeople come second. On average, salespeople actually put in 10 hours around the world doing their job. Then come everybody else, about 8 hours. And then at the very end, and I'm not surprised, come government employees who on average work about 7 hours per day. So obviously there is no problem with salespeople working very hard. And if you think that you don't work very hard, my advice to you is please do not tell your boss. But on average, salespeople do work hard. There's no problem with that. The problem lies somewhere else. So if we wish to boost our sales capabilities, we need to look somewhere else. And this somewhere else, we normally like to blame IT. Oh, well, we don't have the IT support to do our job right. That's the first one we blame. Then we blame training. Well, we don't have enough training. And then communication. Well, things were never communicated very clearly to me. But in reality, when we actually test this, what comes out is that IT and training do not tend to be the big issue, and communication is not the issue. It is really planning, tracking, control. It is organizing things where we tend to fall short. So to go back to training now, that everybody says, well, you know, we need to have some more training to do our job better, let's see what it means to actually do the organization to create context for training. Because training is not to be blamed and IT is not to be blamed. It's the context to them that we should focus on. And normally what companies do is they train their sales staff, and then they say, okay, Joe, now you're trained, now you can do more, so we will increase your objectives. So poor Joe goes back, and the problem is he still doesn't have more time to do more sales. He doesn't have the tools to use the skills that he learned, and the processes that are in place follow yesterday's rules, not today's rules that he just learned. So he is struggling because he doesn't have the support around him. He's got the new skills, but he cannot use them. And then what we do is we start measuring him by his actual results, which is lagging indicators. The results only come in at the very end of the process. And then when we see that he's not delivering, we say, oh, okay, well, obviously he needs some more training. So we send him back for training, and the whole thing starts again, and nothing works. Well, that is not the way to get sales capabilities and sales results. The good way to do it is actually first take a look at what we have in terms of time available, sales capacity. Then we train people to do the job. Then we actually give them tools and processes so that they can use the newly learned skills. And then we plan the activities that they should be doing using the tools and resources, the processes, and their new skills. And then we track these activities, and with that one, we will naturally lead people to accomplish, to get results. So these are the two different ways of doing it. So on the right-hand side, what you see is the right way of doing training, putting it into context. And this context starts with capacity allocation. Proactive staff would normally spend a lot of their time on building the business, on planning to build the business. Reactive staff obviously spend time being reactive to incoming requests. What I put up on the screen is just, you know, an average. So you can start with this one and you can see where you are. Proactive sales staff, people who go out there and drum up the business. Reactive staff who are, for example, in the branches, and people come in and then they have to deal with their issues. Okay, so if we know that this is how we should be spending our time, how are we really spending our time? Well, guess what? This is where capacity measurement comes in, and I have very good news for you. You don't have to invent how to do capacity measurement. People invented it. So we know that we have to measure activities in 15-minute intervals. We have to have defined activities, and we have to have another option. We have to do it several times. We have to be careful about seasonality. We need to keep it anonymous, etc., etc. It's all up there. Instead of going through how to do it, let me say this one. Please, if you need any help with that, we are here to help. So CapPlus Exchange has people who know how to do this, and we have information. So after this is all over, you can send questions into the website, and I will personally look at it and I will answer, and I will share more information so you know how to do it. You do not need to struggle with this one, okay? People already worked this out. So we now plan capacities, we measure it, we reallocate capacities, and guess what? We are doing something that we all want, because when we ask salespeople where they would like to spend more time on, they say, you know, it's really the other administration that I don't want to do. I wish I could spend less time on that. I would like to spend more time on client service and business development and proactive selling. Good news is management thinks exactly the same way, because when we ask management, they also say, oh, I wish my people could spend more time on proactive sales, but I don't think they spend that much time. And unfortunately, reality is still less than what management thinks is reality. So management is even worse than reality. So the good news in all of this is that you do not need to sell very, very strongly the idea that we need to do capacity planning and capacity reallocation, because management is already there. They believe that we should spend more time on proactive sales. You don't have to convince them. Now, what do we need to then add to this? Because it's one thing to have time to do sales, but that is not enough. Here is a question for you, the next quiz. You have magically just doubled the time salespeople in your organization can spend selling. So the question is, how much do you think your sales results will increase? Remember, you gave everybody twice the amount of time to do sales. So, will results increase by 10, 50, 75, 100, or 150%? Please. Spend 5-10 seconds and give me what you think.
Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and do one more poll. And so we'd like to find out, if you've doubled your time that salespeople can spend selling, do you think it will be the same results increase or a different results increase? So we'll go ahead and leave this poll open for another 10 seconds or so. And we're just going to close it now. We can go ahead and close it. And Sandy, 43% of the people are saying that the results will increase at 50%. 19% are saying that it will increase 75%. Another 19% are saying it will increase 100%. 14% are saying it will increase 10%, and about 5% of the people are saying that it would increase 150%. So overwhelmingly, we're seeing that most people are saying the sales results would increase at 50%.
I have to congratulate the group. The reality is, in fact, 50%. That's what research says. So obviously, you guys are very close to the business, and obviously, you have a good feel for the dynamics of sales capability and sales capacity and how the two interrelate. Here is what happens. If we double the time that people can spend selling, results will only increase by about 50%, by half. So obviously, we need to look behind capacity increase to really boost sales results. Once again, congratulations. This is, I think, the first time it happened to me that people overwhelmingly picked the 50%. Again, it shows that you're very close to the business. You understand the dynamics. Congratulations on that. So, okay, so if capacity increase doesn't answer all the issues, what else do we need to do? Well, as I mentioned before, we need to give people the tools, and we need to upgrade the processes that they follow. So the tools, giving them the tools, this is something we actually talked about in one of the free webinars that I ran before. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. I remember I talked about developing a cross-selling tool, when, what, and how to cross-sell, and then having a very simple template that people can use, basically selling the right kind of next product to people who hold today some kind of a product. We can go back and revisit that. You can go back and revisit that. The information is available, and we can talk more about it. But that's just a simple example of giving people the tools to actually use the selling so they can focus on cross-selling. But let's go further, and then let's now talk about planning the right processes and managing it well. Simple example, if I want to get people for, I don't know, say, credit cards, it should be as simple as targeting some people with a credit card offer, and then those who qualify get it. But when you think about it, the process is made up of several steps, and different steps are taken by different departments. So marketing will generate a prospect list, but then credit risk will need to approve it, give it a pre-approval, so that we are not sending offer to people who would not be able to get that card or get that loan. And then we do the direct mailing, and marketing or an agency will do that. We do a follow-up call through the call center. Then the mails come back in and operations will process it, and the sales area will do a follow-up sales meeting. Then the final approval is done by credit, and the disbursement of the loan or the sending out of the cards is done by operations, and the final checkup and follow-up is done by sales again. So there are a number of departments involved. Everything goes in sequence, and just like with sales management, the speed of the slowest camel will set the speed of the caravan. If anybody is slow, if any department is not doing the job perfectly, the whole process breaks down. So when we look at processes, we need to go right through the different parts of the organization. It is not just a sales responsibility. It is the responsibility of all the departments involved. Now, if we then plan these processes, then we are getting into planning what and how our salespeople do. And a lot of people talk about management by objectives. So let me ask you what you believe in, and I promise this will be the last quiz, the last test of today. So there are 4 statements here, and I would like you to pick the one that is closest to your beliefs, what you believe. The first one is that we believe that we should track sales performance by monthly results. And sales performance can be new customers acquired, portfolio growth, whatever. The next one is that we should actually give quarterly objectives to people, and these objectives should relate to bottom line, like a revenue on the client portfolio or profit. The next one, C, is that we should plan detailed activities and then do a very close tracking on a daily basis and review on weekly with everyone. And the final one is that we should actually allow qualified sales staff to manage their own time because that's why they are trained and they have the tools and the processes so that they can do it themselves. Which one would you choose?
Great. Thanks, Sandy. So we have the poll open, and we're already getting some good responses here. So we'll leave the poll open for about another 10 seconds. And we want to know what your thoughts are, whether or not it should be tracking on monthly sales, quarterly, detailed on a daily basis, or allowing them to manage their own time. And so we'll go ahead and close the poll now. And we're actually seeing a split. 32% are saying that they should look at it via the monthly sales as well as by the daily sales, and then 18% are saying quarterly or to let qualified sales staff manage their own time.
Okay, interesting results. Now let me give you my recommendation, based on experience from all these different banks where I was building and running sales organizations. And this will very nicely take us into building a sales machine, looking at the future. So the objective setting, I would propose that we follow C, daily activity plans, and review daily and reviewed weekly. Going back again, this is C. So we plan the activities and then we review them. And there are good reasons for this. A lot of companies believe, oh, we should give people profit objectives, and I am actually very much against it. You see, a profit is a lagging indicator. By the time I know whether or not I got any profit or revenue, there is nothing I can do about it. There is a better way of building my business, and the better way is actually defining the steps I need to take to generate that result. And that is called managing everything, building a sales machine using leading indicators and using conversion efficiency ratios. This is what happens. What I do is I look at what I wish to achieve at the very end, which, as I said, will be a lagging indicator because it lags, it follows everything that happened. By the time I get this number, there's nothing I can do about it. I cannot go back into the past and change things. There are current indicators that tell me how the heart of the business is beating today. And these are things like the actual daily sales results. But daily sales results are there because I have done a lot of things before. I planned my time. I made sales calls. I set up meetings. I had those meetings. And in the meetings, I actually sold products. So all these steps that will take me to getting the sale are called the leading indicators, the predictive steps. If I am making enough of these steps and I am converting a sales call to a booked meeting with a high enough efficiency ratio, then I will actually get to my result at the very end. And this is what is building a forward-looking sales machine is all about. I pick my objective, then I look at the process that will get me to accomplishing those objectives, and I will track the specific steps and the efficiency with which I'm going from one step to the next. Now, that is, as I said, planning my way to success, activity planning. And then the beauty of all of that is that if at any time I can see that I am not meeting results, I can do a mini diagnostics and I can fix things before I get bad results. So for example, if I'm not meeting my results, I can say, okay, so did I not make enough calls, or did I not get enough people at the end of the line? If I didn't get enough people, then maybe the call list was not very good. Let's fix it. And if I'm getting good results, it's okay. But if the results are still low, then maybe the list is still not good, or maybe my calling skills are not very good. You see, I keep talking about myself because I can do this for myself, or I can do this for my people. If I'm a manager, I can do it for my people. If I'm the sales guy out there, I can do it for myself. No difference. The process is the same. Or if not enough calls are made, then maybe I didn't have enough time, or I wasn't very efficient. If I'm not very efficient, I need to learn about time management. Or if I don't have enough time, I need to look at capacity and reallocate it. So I always know where to intervene and where to help. And because people always ask me, so Sandy, give me some benchmarks, to which I always respond, well, you need to develop your own benchmark, to which people respond, yeah, but give me somewhere to start. So here are some benchmarks, kind of the mid-range, the best case, and the worst case scenarios that companies would tend to see. You need to measure this for yourself and then see, are you closer to the max? Or are you in the midsection, or are you closer to the bottom part? And then look at how you can improve these ratios. Okay. Now, improving these ratios and doing things right is really fantastic because you get results. So let me show you the results that you can generate by implementing something like this. When I was at Raiffeisen International, we bought a bank called Banca Agricola. And the first thing we wanted to do is we wanted to boost the sales results, so we started generating more money. And we could not change the IT setup. We could not magically create more branches. We could not do a lot of things that would take time. So what we said is we will simply implement this sales machine type approach. We will plan the sales activities, we will give people help, we will track activities on a daily basis, and we will discuss every day what we can do better next day. Are we efficient, are we not? This is very simply what we did. And by the way, the tracking was real fun. We didn't have IT to track it. So you know what the tracking consisted of? There was a huge big piece of sheet of paper that we pinned on the wall of the kitchen of every branch, and manually every day we track things on this piece of paper. That's how sophisticated we were. But the results were fantastic. We started, first we tested it on deposits, and we kicked in with the campaign. This is the control, and this is the test branches where we implemented the new process. So control, there was a bit of a lift because obviously there is a campaign going on, but look at the difference this simple approach made. And then we repeated it with loans. Again, the branches that had the new setup got really fantastic results. Then we also tracked customer satisfaction. And this was the city refers to the control and test refers to the branches. What happened is customer satisfaction increased. Customers actually liked the idea that we were talking to them, that we were worrying about what they may need next. So they actually told us that, hey, for the first time, I feel like the bank is worrying about me and cares for me. So it's a myth when we say that, oh, customers don't like it when we try to sell to them. They like it, because to them it means that we actually care about them. And the next slide is possibly the most important one. The results here are amazing. The point that this slide makes is that once people get used to success, they will not give it up. So once we get them started on the path to success by telling them how to do it based on daily activity planning, they will not give it up. This is what happens. The blue part of the bars refer to the portion of the results that were there because of central support. The maroon part, this purple part, refers to the part of results that were generated by salespeople themselves, by other means, not by using central support. Central support is like giving lists and doing direct mail and so on, and sales activities are just, you know, their own activities. So what happens is we kick in the campaign, and all of a sudden, using the centrally provided list, the results go up. And salespeople start, you know, getting more active. You can see that their own activities go up. And then what happens is, as we use up the available lists, and we can give less and less support centrally, the results decline. Salespeople didn't like that. And they started looking for ways of boosting results again because they got used to the idea that they were successful. And all of a sudden, this maroon part started to grow. And salespeople started to use their own ingenuity, their own efforts to make up for the lack of central support, to make up for the lack of lists. And they came up with different ideas on how to boost the business. Now, this is the real beauty of teaching people how to be successful. Once you have taught them, they get used to it, they tasted success, they will not give it up, and they will do whatever they can come up with to stay successful. Now, this is a case study of how implementing activity-based planning and daily tracking can actually boost your results. And then the rest of it, I don't have much time to talk about. There are things that people would then normally back all of this up. But I will go very quickly here because I would like to leave time for questions. Because normally what happens then is we say, okay, now that we planned everything, we want to make sure that we track it well, and we reward people who are delivering well. For tracking, we would normally use a balanced scorecard where we take different areas of the business, we give them different weighting by function, by seniority, by whatever, and based on that we can track the activities so that we are not one-sided in our activities, always focusing on what needs to be done today as opposed to what needs to be done long-term. We do that, and then we do performance tracking. I mentioned daily huddles, daily tracking of the activities is very important, and weekly reviews are very important. So we implement that kind of a tracking mechanism. Then we put in a compensation system that will reward people for taking the right steps and taking those steps very efficiently. And there are ways that we need to design these things. We need to give weighting, high weighting to individual results. We need to compensate on a quarterly basis because compensating half yearly is too long, etc., etc. Again, the good news is people have thought about this and it is all worked out. So if you need help, please let us know, and we will be glad to give you information how to do all of that. Okay? And for we need to look at how different sales activities can be compensated. There is a whole lot there that we can still cover, you know, the tracking of the results, the mechanisms. We could also talk about own versus contracted sales force and training structures and different sales processes. But instead of all of that, let me give you some time to ask questions, and let me finish off by recapping what we have actually talked about. We started with the fact that everybody does sales, but having sales capability and organization means having different components of this. The sales organization itself, sales management practices, processes, and skills. How we can measure if we have all of these in place by using the mini diagnostics I shared with you, where we need to focus. How we can create a context to sales training so that people will actually have time, so we do capacity measurement and capacity reallocation. People have the tools to use the newly learned skills, like the cross-selling tool, and we have the right processes, which actually will cross through different functional departments. We need to align them all, and then we need to plan activities and look at those activities on a daily basis and track them on a weekly basis, and then we always know where we are and whether or not we will get results at the end. And I gave you a very specific example that showed that it's not only that we get results, it's not only that our customers will like it, but it is also that we will train our people how to be successful. And once they tasted success, they will not give it up, they will be successful, ergo, the company will be successful. On that cheerful note, success, I thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to open it up for questions before we meet again. And the next time we meet, July 30th, hopefully you will all join me, because we will talk about how to put all of this into practice, the kind of sales practices and engagement techniques that people can then use to take these steps, the foundations, the permission-based sales process, the different sales skills, the killer silence, positioning numbers, and closing techniques, how to actually get that sale done. That's what we will talk about it. With that one, a little bit of preview. Thank you very much for your attention, and my question is, are there any questions? Jessica, over to you to open it up.
Thank you, Sandy. This was really exciting, and I think it will lead us into our next session as well. And so, as Sandy said, we're going to open it up to questions. And so we'll go ahead and take those questions via the chat box or via the questions box. So go ahead and post those questions now, and I can go ahead and ask those directly to Sandy. Otherwise, we will, I can unmute your microphone if you have a question. And so one question that we had was in terms of licensing for institutions. So we have some varied, institutions on here. We have some commercial banks, we have some microfinance institutions, we have some non-bank financing institutions, maybe some leasing companies as well. And if a company has a license only to do credit, so if an MFI is limited only to be providing credit, how can this institution improve their sales activity? Because they're not going to have as many of these options for cross-selling and such. And is one of the ways to do that to focus on the quality of their customer service?
The answer is yes, definitely. Customer service is the be-all, end-all. One of the things I learned by working at and with different banks, that customer focus and service quality are really the true differentiating factors. When you think about it, if you try to be competitive by having a competitive price, other banks or financial institutions in the market can copy your pricing, your interest rate overnight. So you don't have a lasting advantage. If you're trying to compete by coming up with new product options, those can also be copied within a week or two. So again, you don't have a very lasting advantage. If you build an organization that focuses at things from the customer's perspective and tries to address the customer's true needs as opposed to what they say they want. And again, mark my words, there's a big difference between what customers say they want and what they may actually need. If we put in the time to understand things from their perspective, to understand their needs, and then we give the offer for that need, and we do it at a consistently acceptable high quality, then we build an advantage that is lasting. And the reason why it is lasting is because, again, remember this number, for an organization to become truly customer focused takes about 2 years. I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm very glad to tell you this, because it means that if you wish to be customer focused, it will take you about 2 years to get there. But the good news is everybody else will also have to work on it for 2 years. So by the time the other guys figure out that you are doing something right and you are gaining a competitive advantage by acting like that, and they want to do it, it will take them 2 years to try to catch up. And by that time, you will be somewhere else because you have 2 years to prepare for that. So customer service, customer focus is the true differentiator. That's the first thing. The second one, with that one comes, even if I'm only selling credit products, number one, there are all sorts of different credit products and features and changes I can make. And number two, when I think about products, I should be thinking about an offer. A product is not just a product. A product, when I ask customers, is not, for example, a line of credit. It is how that line of credit is delivered. It is how long they have to wait before they know whether or not they will get that. It is how long before they will actually get that. It is how much they are kept in the loop. So I say product, and I think of the specific line of credit. When the customer says product, they are thinking about also how that product is delivered. And I can work on that delivery part. And also, I can look around and see whether or not I can attach different offers, maybe from other institutions, to that product. I can do education about how to use that. I can, for example, strike a deal with a business school that will give me their interns free of charge to advise my small business customers on building their business, and I make this service available free of charge to people who take credit from me. So I pitch it as an extra benefit to them. They benefit, my customers, because they don't have to pay for it. And the students at the school benefit because they are getting work experience. It costs me nothing but some thinking. So these are all the things that I can do, even if I'm truly restricted to credit offers. I hope I gave you some thought-provoking ideas.
Very helpful, very helpful. And we're getting quite a few more. Yeah, we're getting quite a few more questions coming in, and I'm actually going to unmute the microphone for one of our partners in Bangladesh. Can you hear me, Mohammed?
Yes. Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Great. Go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead and introduce yourself if you'd like, and ask your question directly to Sandy.
Okay. Sandy, I am from Bangladesh, from IDLC Finance Limited. My question is, whether a sales team based on all entirely commission basis and versus sales team salaried sales team, which one is globally successful?
The answer is that, as always, is that it depends. And usually, what the global best practice is a mixture of the two. Normally, what happens is, when I have my own people, that is my own employees, I would have part of their salary as fixed and part of it as variable. And depending on their position, what they are supposed to do, and depending on their seniority, the variable part will change. The closer I am to specific sales activities on a daily basis, and also the higher I am in the organization, the higher the variable part of the compensation is. There are also differences between different cultures. Variable compensation is very strong in North America. So if I go to North America, I would see salespeople having maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of their total compensation as variable, tied to results. When I go to Europe, it's very rare to find more than 1/4 or 1/3 of my compensation tied to results, because different cultures accept this variability differently. Now this is, and again, it depends on how high I am. The higher up I go, the higher percentage is variable. Now, this is with my own employees. When I have a so-called agent network, a sales force for hire, then the situation changes. With a sales force for hire, the model that works best is actually to give them close to 100% of their compensation as a variable compensation. But I need to be careful that when I am introducing the compensation, when I am building the sales force, I do not immediately start out with, for example, 90% variable compensation. What I would normally do, what tends to work around the world, is that if I'm building an agent sales force, I bring in a new agent. For the first, say, 3 months, I'm giving this person a fixed salary. Then between 3 and 9 months, I'm giving the person a draw, and after 9 months, I'm changing to a mostly variable compensation. I'm giving them a fixed salary for the first 3 months to make sure that they have income and they don't get too nervous, too stressed out to deliver. They can focus on learning the skills. Then I'm giving them a draw. A draw basically means that I set what kind of results I wish to get from them, and I give them a compensation assuming that they will achieve those results. And then at the end of every month or every 3 months, I look at whether or not they achieve those results, and I can either give them less money for the next period if they did not achieve the results to compensate for the overpayment, or I can give them some extra money because they overachieved. So they do get a fixed amount up front, and then I adjust it after I see the results. And then after 9 months, I switch fully to a mostly variable compensation when 80 to 90% of their compensation is variable, and it really depends on how they perform, because it takes that long for them to really get to the point that they can deliver. So I walked around the question, but I hope I gave you a good enough overview based on own salesperson versus agent, based on the seniority, based on startup versus experienced person, and based on different cultures and geographies. And that should give you a good map to navigate in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sandy, we actually, oh, Mohammed, was that, did you have any other follow-on questions for Sandy?
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Sandy, we actually had a bit of a follow-on question about that in terms of how and if doing commission-based sales affects sales volume. If you've seen any change based on that, and if it actually affects the quality of the loans as well. So, in the case that people are really interested in just doing, you know, the most amount of loans, are they struggling to get that quality that's needed?
Okay. Well, first of all, the commission, yes, indeed, a commission-based compensation system will promote better results, more sales. Good salespeople like to be successful, and they like to be recognized for success. And their compensation is a very tangible way of recognition. It's not the only way, but it's a very tangible way. Now, there is a potential worry about pushing them too much into generating loans, and the question is whether or not quality will suffer. I think that's an issue we all face. Well, this is where structuring things right and using a balanced scorecard comes in. And I put balanced scorecard template back on the screen so that we can refer back to this. You see, in a balanced scorecard, there is always an area called control, and that is what we call a knockout criteria. And control means that people should do things in a legal way, they should follow the processes, and into control I can put in things like credit quality. Now, my strong belief is that I would always structure the credit approval process so that I am not running the risk of approving something of questionable quality just to be able to generate more results. So I should give very clear guidelines on what can and cannot be approved as credit, what should and should not be brought in for approval, because I as a salesperson should judge whether or not this person will be able to get that credit. As long as I am within guidelines, even if the credit goes bad later on, my perspective is it is not the fault of the salesperson, as long as the salesperson followed the process and followed the criteria. The salesperson has not designed the process and has not set the credit criteria. Someone else did. Therefore, I should not be blaming the salesperson for the results as long as the salesperson followed the credit criteria and followed the process. And I can incent the salesperson to do the best within these given criteria with a variable compensation system. So the compensation system is there to reward the performance, but I put criteria around this so that I'm not bringing in, excuse my language, junk. I'm not bringing in low quality stuff, but I say that I will compensate you for the good quality things because I'm putting some parameters around your compensation. So that is how I can resolve that potential conflict.
It's very helpful. And we have a short question, and then I'm going to get into a couple meatier questions. But what are your thoughts on using call scripts as sales tools?
Do it.
Do it.
No, listen, the beauty of call scripts is, and I'm saying do it, but here's the thing. The biggest advantage of working out call scripts is actually not that people will slavishly follow the call scripts. The advantage is that it forces proactive thinking about the communication, about the conversation itself. What I can guarantee to everybody is that if you start doing call scripting, okay, then within a short period of time, say within half a year to a year, people will get to the point that they will not need to have the script there because they will know how to do it, because we are putting time against developing call scripts, and they will remember. So the biggest advantage of doing call scripting is not that you will have it in front of you, it is that you have actually participated in developing it, in practicing it, therefore those skills are within you, and you don't need the call script to go to anymore. And that's why I'm saying do it.
It's very helpful. And I'm actually going to, I'm actually going to unmute one of our partners in Rwanda. Poli, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. If you want to introduce yourself and ask your question directly to Sandy.
Okay, my name is Karimba Polepole. I work for Koje Bank. I wanted to have more clarifications on the importance of proactive and reactive sales processes. What's the most important among these two processes of sales planning in order to be most competitive?
Okay, we will talk a little bit more about this next time, so I will try to give a short answer. The key difference between proactive and reactive sales process is that I, as the salesperson, initiate the proactive process. In terms of reactive sales process, it is the customer or the client or the prospect that initiates it. So if I, as the salesperson, say that I am going to talk to this person, whether or not the person is already my customer, then it will be a proactive process because I am the one who decided to have the conversation. When somebody comes to me and asks a question and says, can you help me with this or that, or what do you think, or I want some change, it is a reactive process because I am reacting to it. Now, when the way to make these things very, very effective, very efficient, is to actually pay enough attention to reactive sales processes, because the problem is the following. Proactive sales processes are more difficult than reactive ones, because I have to find the right person, I have to figure out how to start a conversation. In a reactive process, all I have to do is react. So we spend a lot of time training people on proactive sales processes, but not enough time on training them on reactive processes. And good companies actually train their people on reactive processes. And what we need to do is make sure that everybody understands that in a reactive process, there are two types of situations. One, when an immediate answer or action is required. Two, when the action or response can wait. So first of all, we need to know the difference between the two. And the second thing we need to know is that we should try to turn every reactive situation into a proactive situation. So when somebody comes to us and says, I want this, I decide immediately, yes, okay, can I provide it or not? But I will always try to discover if that is really what the person wants, because that will separate the winning companies from the losing companies. If I put in the time to be a bit proactive and understand whether or not this person really needs what he thinks he wants, then I have just added a proactive element, and I am doing that reactive sales process in a very efficient way, and I'm building relationship, etc., etc. So those are some of the pointers about proactive and reactive processes. I hope it helped.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. That's wonderful. We're going to do one more question, and actually, I think we'll sort of start this question because it's a two-parter and it's pretty meaty. And then I'd like to suggest, Sandy, that we continue the conversation on our LinkedIn page. And so if you haven't joined our LinkedIn group, we'll make sure that we send this out to you, but we do continue some of these discussions there. And I think that this is a great question to give Sandy some time to post a lengthier answer, because I do think it requires that. So the first part of this question is on sales burnout. And so, if salespeople are in the market significantly, then there's a chance of sales burnout, and how do you handle that? So that's part one, and then part two.
Can I ask for clarification? Yeah. When we talk about sales burnout, are we talking about salespeople burning out, or are we talking about using up the available prospect universe? Because those are two different types of burnouts.
I think that the salespeople burnout specifically. So I think that's what we're talking about. Salespeople actually burning out. And then the second part of that, and I think that this is a great question for us to answer on LinkedIn, would be, what are the building blocks for developing a sales-friendly culture in the company? So I think maybe we can leave that large question maybe for LinkedIn, Sandy, and maybe we can just talk about the burnout now, unless you want to give a short answer for the second part as well.
Yes, indeed. The second part is a meaty question, a lengthier process. There are a few basic pointers, and I can talk about that. And the salespeople burnout, it seems like a simple question, but it is in fact a fairly complicated question. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that on LinkedIn as well. But here are the things, just a couple of points so that people don't feel disappointed, and then I follow up on LinkedIn. Okay, the salespeople burnout. This is where we need to go back to the basics and make sure that we do that right. You remember I started with capacity planning and capacity reallocation? Well, that is the first thing we need to keep in mind, so that we don't try to just get more and more and more from our salespeople, but we in fact task for time available, because people tend to burn out when we ask them to do more than they actually have time to do. Okay, and the problem is that the best people are most at risk of burning out, because those who don't care will not drive themselves. Those who do care will drive themselves. So we in fact selectively burning out our best performers. That is not very good. So the first step is to pay very, very close attention to capacity planning and capacity reallocation. This capacity planning kind of mindset needs to be brought into activity planning. The beauty of activity planning is that when we work back from the objective and we start planning the different activities and we look at how efficiently we convert from one to the next, it will very quickly become obvious whether or not somebody can actually do all of that. Because it's one thing to say that you should increase your portfolio by 10%, but it's another thing to actually break that down into specific steps and see what people actually need to do. And if it turns out that they must make 20 calls and have 10 meetings every single day, then we know that it is impossible. They will burn out and we still don't get the results. So this activity planning exercise, if we do it right, is another great step towards avoiding burnout. And beyond these two things, the capacity planning and activity planning done right, then come some of the more complicated things, which is basically understanding the situation, managing my people the right way. This is where we get into managing using the situational leadership techniques and so on. And I would like to leave that to the LinkedIn discussion. I will give some more pointers on that on LinkedIn, okay? And the same thing on the building the sales-friendly culture. There are some basic pointers. Number one, everybody should understand that everybody does sales. The whole organization does sales. We need to be customer focused. The customer doesn't care about salesperson X, Y, and Z and somebody in operation X, Y, and Z. The salesperson looks at the bank and says, this is a bank, this is an organization. Everybody's working for the same organization. So everybody should understand that they are representing the company when they are dealing with a customer or a prospect. Okay, so everybody does external sales, everybody does internal sales because we help each other. And a huge big thing that we need to do is making sure that everybody understands what the other one does. So, for example, people in the head office should actually go out and do a sales job and observe sales job on a regular basis. When we do sales training, I always suggest that the heads of different functional departments, certainly departments that support sales, should be there at the sales training so that they see what are the kind of things that salespeople are supposed to do, how they do it, and they can ask themselves the question, how can I help them do this? So that we basically permeate the whole organization with this kind of sales kind of thinking. What is it that sales does, how I can help it, and what is my part in all of this. And then we can take this one step further, and we can operationalize it within the organization by implementing what is called service level agreements, which are very short commitments that we make to each other within the organization, that if I need this from you, this is how you will respond. This is called SLA, service level agreement, and that is to put it in place and then operationalizing it. So I will give you guys a little bit more about this on LinkedIn, but let me just leave you with these key pointers as a very brief answer.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And people are asking for our LinkedIn group name, and it's actually, if you go to our website, it's on the first page of our website, and our group name is also CapPlus Exchange. And so we'll make sure that we send that out to people via the internet, and so you're able to join that group, and we'll get some of these other questions answered. So thanks so much for the excellent discussion period, and thank you very much to Sandy for a very engaging session.
And thank you very much for the great questions. I really enjoyed it, and please keep them coming. I'd love to get more. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.